Welcome to Media Melanie TV. Today I'm back to talk about Paradise Season 2 on Hulu. We are so back, baby, with a 3-episode premiere: Graceland, Mayday, and Another Day in Paradise. And true to Dan Fogelman's foundational form, he did a wonderful job juxtaposing these different storylines, linking them together, leveraging these flashbacks. As always, incredible sound design, the emotions. And yeah, it took me a minute to get my bearings in episode 1. But I've got to say, I became pretty vested right away. I love Shailene Woodley, and I think her as Annie is a perfect casting for this. And the chemistry between her and Link, who, by the way, is played by Thomas Doherty, who you may recognize from Tell Me Lies Season 2. He played Leo, one of Lucy's boyfriends. Just finished covering that series, by the way. That finale was wild. And by the way, when Link showed Annie his college ID, I was really hoping it was going to say Baird College in this sort of funny tie-in between Tell Me Lies and Paradise. I mean, they're both on Hulu. Come on, guys. That would have been really cute. In today's video, I'm going to get into my initial reactions, my thoughts, and also an early theory I have regarding the potential for time travel down below the bunker, which may sound a little crazy, but I will give some evidence that could potentially bolster that idea. But before I dive in, please go ahead, like this video, and hit that subscribe button. I am also covering right now School Spirits, which is a supernatural teen drama on Paramount+, and then looking ahead to other shows in the near future. From Euphoria, Testaments, The Way Home, Yellow Jackets later on, so many great shows, so I do hope you'll stick with me for all the TV talk. All right, let's dive in. First and foremost, the show does a wonderful job incorporating mystery, drama, emotion, sci-fi, and doing it all in a post-apocalyptic world with these flashbacks, giving origin stories and more context into each one of these characters and how they connected. Episode 1 felt very Earth Abides to me. It's a show I reviewed here on the channel. It's on MGM+. And instead of the typical post-apocalyptic zombies and all that, it's more of a human story, and that is something that Paradise does really well. The way you can feel things through the screen, it was palpable. First of all, I could almost feel the cold with Annie and Gail in Graceland after everything had went down. That, and then the sun on Annie's face when it finally came out again. The yearning of the first human touch she had since everything went down between her and Link. That was so incredibly palpable. And for me, yearning is something I always look for in shows, and absolute 10 out of 10 for that. Same thing with the hot meal that she ate with the group that ended up coming to Graceland. And by the way, I like how they teetered on the line of, are these good people? Are these bad people? Sure, they told Annie that they're the good guys. And as it turns out, they were not there to harm anybody. I also enjoyed the pop culture nicknames. Of course, Link is named after Zelda, The Legend of Zelda, the old school video game on Nintendo, which I loved when I was younger. But just the way they're also world building here, both on the surface and underneath. And the transformation that Annie made from having grown up what looks to be poor and then going into her medical training, dropping out, and then ending up working at Graceland, which basically saved her life. I mean, the woman is pregnant in there, riding a horse, going to see what's going on with that plane crash. And the way that they link the stories together again is very Dan Fogelman, like from This Is Us. And episode 1 is a trademark Dan Fogelman move, sort of a bottle episode with characters who we haven't met yet. And I think for some people, sometimes that can be off-putting because we're familiar with the characters we met last season. But in building this world and expanding the characters, I think it was done in a natural way, didn't feel too forced. And for me, I felt an affinity towards these characters almost immediately. And then also seeing the backstory on Link. He was this prodigal son for the scientist who had the wife, Alex. And by the way, this whole Alex situation, I thought he actually injected her and that would be her demise. But it seems like Alex is still alive and in the bunker. And now this group is on a mission to go and take her out. But why? I think it has to do with whatever's going on underneath that bunker. And yes, I do think it's time travel. Still gonna get there. And also getting more Billy. Of course, he didn't make it through season 1. But seeing what his involvement is and the fact that he actually saved this guy who now is going to come around and they're now heading to this bunker in Colorado and Billy's gone, so he's not going to feel the consequences. But I would imagine that Sinatra is not going to be very happy when she finds out who this guy is when they get there. Of course, this is going to derail Xavier's journey to try to find Teri in Atlanta, but the way that they told the story of Teri and Xavier, how they got together, masterpiece. Playing around with Teri getting her vision back as Xavier is coming to after the plane crash, these meaningful connections and how they tie in the past and the present. I love the formulaic nature of this. It never feels too forced to me, and I just really enjoy watching it. It was also nice to see Xavier, having been injured in this plane crash, still trying to protect these kids. Of course, he's a father, conveying that fatherly energy, trying to do the right thing despite the fact that he's like majorly injured. And I do think we need to suspend a little bit of disbelief because honestly, what are the odds that Xavier's plane is going to crash within eyesight of Graceland? And then Annie just happens to come and get him, and Xavier's the tie to get the group who wants to get to the Colorado bunker into the bunker. So it worked out really great. And I'm fine overlooking that because I think this story feels like it's evolving naturally. So meanwhile, down below in the bunker, Sinatra finally comes to. She's been out for about a month and things have changed. There's more of a police state situation going on. Henry is now president. And Sinatra is immediately questioned about whether or not she's been siphoning power out of the bunker for personal gain. And it didn't show that she was lying, but I think the reason for that is because she's not necessarily doing it for personal gain. So it's not a lie, because she's definitely siphoning the power, but I do think it is maybe for the betterment of everybody or whatever this technology is that she's developing. And this whole thing with seeing Sinatra ahead of time talking about getting this other parcel of land once Cal Bradford was elected as president and having the trouble selling it. That's, of course, why she sends Billy to get this guy to sign the agreement. Billy ends up taking him out. So they get the land. But there are some interesting things going on. First of all, Jeremy Bradford's friends are disappearing. They are going down below the surface of the bunker. And by the way, the scientist who developed this is down there too. So they're holding the people there. It's not like they're necessarily taking them out. But I think whatever they're doing is some kind of an experiment that relates to the fact we heard quantum entanglement. I am such a time travel girly. Dark, one of my favorite shows. If you have not watched that on Netflix, highly recommend. And for anybody who doesn't know what quantum entanglement is, I'm just going to read a quick little blurb here. And hey, I'm no scientist at all, but just the principle of this does fascinate me. Quantum entanglement, where particles share a unified state regardless of distance, means their properties are intrinsically linked, often described as sharing a common fate. When one particle is measured, its partner state is instantly determined, suggesting a deeply interconnected reality. However, this does not imply a predetermined fated universe, as quantum outcomes are fundamentally probabilistic and random until observed. And it can involve the shared destiny. Entangled particles are like twins with linked fates. Measuring one instantly defines the other, even across galaxies. And quantum entanglement is a principle they also talk about a lot with time travel and the existence of something in two places. And apparently simulations that are using quantum entanglement suggest it's possible to simulate backward time travel at the particle level. And this could potentially allow researchers to alter past experimental states, which may improve quantum technology. While not literal time travel for humans, this method uses entanglement to send information from a future state back to the past linked particle. And some of the dialogue clues that are leading me to think that there is something experimental going on with this energy. Sinatra says at one point it was never just about the bunker, so there's obviously been more at play. It said that you can't buy time when she's meeting with that scientist talking about the caldera before all of this went down. That line in particular, you can't buy time. And also, the bunker is pointless without this technology and the fate of the world depends on it. Not to mention, we hear the word side project, so we know that Sinatra has this other thing going on. They had to get the land for it. And when she finally gets home, she's talking to her housekeeper. Meanwhile, Gabriella is spying on her because obviously there was a major fallout with Sinatra having lied to her in season 1. And the housekeeper's talking about Alex being the wife of that physicist that Billy ended up taking out. And the power problem has been resolved. Then asking if they have an estimate, are there any other messages? And because that scientist had asked Billy not to take out the prodigal son Link, in saying that the fate of the world may depend on it, and at one point they referenced the bunker saving billions of people, but obviously the bunker has a capacity of 25,000. So if they're talking about something for the greater good and quantum entanglement and physics, are they trying to somehow send something back in order to help prevent this caldera? Are they maybe trying to work on technology using this principle to send people to the future after the surface has improved for human habitability? Or is there something special about that land inherently, some kind of underground energy that is tied to the bunker? I'd assume not that, because if they're siphoning power from the bunker over there, obviously it needs to be fueled from another source. Sometimes the geography of things can dictate what's going on. School spirits that I'm covering now is a good example of that. A lot of mystery so far between Alex, whatever's going on underneath. Jeremy Bradford ends up getting arrested, encountering the scientist, and says, we're going to blow the doors off here. But his friends have been disappearing, and everybody, like I said, seems to still be down there and be okay. So what are they doing to these people? Are they just locking them up simply because they're rebelling? Or are they literally lab rats being locked below the surface? And then not to mention the drama that's down in the bunker. Jane, who is the biggest villain reveal from season 1, still cannot be trusted. She's still taking people out down there. Not only did she get the president, but she framed Robinson for it, who I'm kind of sad to see go. I really actually enjoy her character. And it's also a little bit devastating for Xavier's kids because it seems like she's their caretaker. So now who's going to be taking care of them? How soon is Xavier going to return there? And really, too, if he's derailed going to Colorado, how on earth is he going to get to her in Atlanta? And will there be more communications from her? Sinatra asked if there were more messages, so obviously there are some people communicating from the surface. And then I kept asking myself also, Teri's in Atlanta, she just happened to survive. And yeah, that could be because they were able to communicate where a safe spot was for her to go, but could Teri also be more deeply involved in this in some way that we're not quite seeing yet? And I'm also curious, is there a tie between Xavier and Link? Because when Xavier was coming to in Graceland with Annie, they juxtaposed this scene with Link sort of walking away towards a door somewhere. Is there a connection between him and Xavier that we don't know? What's interesting about season 1 of this show, I covered it on the channel and I never saw the big reveal of the baddie coming. I think you have to be an A+ detective who literally went to police school or FBI academy or something to have picked out the villain from season 1 and how they masterfully tied together him being the one that initially made an attempt at the president and then now posing as somebody in the bunker. So what I'm expecting is some other big connection and probably a slow burn to be revealed between Xavier and him or potentially Sinatra. But it seems like there's some kind of connective tissue between these two characters, just not sure what yet. Or was that more of a flash of somehow Annie seeing it? I don't know. But I also like the romance, how they are developing this story between Link and Annie. The fact that they got together that once, which by the way was just titillating to watch. Can you imagine going all that time without any human touch and then having an encounter like that? First of all, with somebody who you thought was a bad guy and knocked out at some point who does turn out to be good. And then getting pregnant in a time when obviously we need more human life to help repopulate the earth. But how is that baby going to survive? I'm really happy to see at least that the pregnancy seems to be progressing in at least a typical way. And it looks like she's going to burst at any time. So I also think whenever the baby birthing scene does come, it's probably going to be emotionally fraught. So I will remember to have tissues, which I needed for nearly every single episode of This Is Us. And even though Paradise is obviously different, yes, it does tell the story of emotions and connections, but it also has this sci-fi post-apocalyptic element. So to be able to weave all of these elements together into one show and do it in a way where it feels natural, it's entertaining, you're still vested in all these characters. Hats off once again to Dan Fogelman. And honestly, Sterling K. Brown too. I mean, I would watch him in anything. He is so incredibly talented. Randall Pearson may be one of my favorite characters in recent television history. This Is Us is most definitely in my top 10 of favorite shows of all time as well. I just love his character of Xavier Collins, and really Shailene Woodley here as Annie, and now Thomas Doherty as Link. This cast is stacked. I'm also a big Sarah Shahi fan. Loved her from all kinds of different shows. Person of Interest might actually be one of my favorites, though. She's kind of a badass. And then Sex Life was another one that she was in. She's got such beautiful hair. And actually, interestingly enough, since I mentioned hair, I recently from the YouTube shopping program got a sample of MD hair regrowth system. I'm like in my mid 40s, like hair's thinning a little bit, and I've been using it now for a couple months, and I've got to say 10 out of 10. I'm gonna link that down below. Sorry to divert there a little bit. But also, too, now being able to see more on the surface, yes, it's nice we have this love story going on. But also there's a lot of bad stuff there. The bad guys who were trying to take out those poor kids and how silent they were. I actually thought, oh my gosh, are these kids unable to speak in general? And we learned that they are, but imagine the trauma of being this age and surviving on the surface for that long without any sort of parental guidance. I felt so bad with the whole thing with the kids and just, again, Xavier's dad energy trying to jump in and try to do the right thing. Xavier Collins is a badass. But I'm going to tell you, I think the biggest mistake that we saw on the surface was probably Billy letting this guy Link go, because obviously that is going to come back to bite Sinatra straight in the butt whenever they show up at the bunker. Will Xavier somehow be able to warn them that they're coming? I mean, he's clearly outnumbered, so I don't think he's just going to simply divert this mission to Atlanta. But maybe they do make some kind of deal. I get you to the bunker, then we go to Atlanta. Obviously, Teri has to come into play at some point this season. And then meanwhile, underground, we have this resistance going on. But now that Jeremy Bradford is down below, how is he going to organize something and be able to blow the doors off, as he said? And also, why is Sinatra's housekeeper so tied into all of this? But she doesn't realize Gabrielle is spying on her. So now that she's caught wind of this, obviously she's going to be trying to figure out what's going on with this power. Overall, I think these first 3 episodes are off to a great start. I don't always love multi-episode premieres, but in this case it worked because we really needed this full circle introduction to our new characters, how they're all tied together, setting the table for this mystery, building the world on the surface, and then connecting it once everybody does get to the bunker. So, what does everybody think? Are we off to a same good start that we were in season 1? It took a little bit, obviously, to get the big twist and reveal, but I'm expecting a lot more of that here in season 2, especially how intricately they wove that web of deception and mystery in season 1. It's just nice to have a show back that's easy to watch and really checks so many different boxes. I try to tell people who haven't watched this, look, you've got to watch it. Episode 7 from season 1 is honestly one of my favorite episodes of television from the last few years, and also getting the call back from James Marsden's speech in that episode, President Cal Bradford, that was maybe one of the best political television speeches I've ever heard, and also nice to see flashbacks of James Marsden again because let's face it, he's amazing. But that is all for these first 3 episodes of Paradise. I'll be back with a review every week, so again, be sure to like this video, hit that subscribe button. I think we are in for an awesome season. I'll be back again soon. Media Melanie, clicking off.